Welcome, everybody, to today's Coffee with a Codex. My name is Dot Porter. I am a curator in the Kislak Center for Special Collections, Rare Books and Manuscripts at the University of Pennsylvania Libraries. I split my time with the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies, which is a research and development institute in the Kislak Center that's focused on manuscripts, kind of broadly defined. We do a lot of digital work. In fact, the digital work is sort of my focus, but I also do a lot of outreach. I love doing video, and this is a great time for me to sort of take a book off the shelf and do a little bit of a show and tell. So my usual caveat that I am not going to be particularly an expert on the content of this, but it's a great time for us just to kind of look at it together. And maybe some of you on the call know more than I do, and that would be great. If you want to, share your knowledge as we go ahead and type in the chat. My colleague Amy Hutchins is here. She is our manuscripts cataloger, and she's also incredibly knowledgeable. So together we will get we'll get through this. So what is this we're talking about today? So today I advertised one manuscript. I actually have two more that I pulled out yesterday, just in case we have time to look at them. But these are all, they're copies of, at least partial copies of a text called The Canon of Medicine, which was written by a Persian physician, philosopher, very knowledgeable person generally. We call him in the West Avicenna, or maybe Avicenna. His name in Arabic is something like Ibn Sina, but that got sort of broken down. And so in the West, I'm going to be calling him Avicenna because that's what how I've always heard it pronounced. So apologies if that's, I know it's not exactly right. But he wrote a lot of texts in his life. He lived at the end of the 10th century into the 11th century. He died, I think, 1037. And the Canon of Medicine was his big encyclopedia of medicine that he wrote. He wrote it in Arabic, and it contains five sort of books that look at various important medical things. Let's see, Canon of Medicine, 5 books. Essays on basic medical and physiological principles, including anatomy. The second book is a list of medical substances arranged alphabetically. Third, diagnosis and treatment of diseases specific to one part of the body. Fourth book, diagnosis and treatment of conditions covering multiple parts of the body. And 5, a formulary of compound remedies. So this text was incredibly popular. It was immediately translated and brought into the West in Latin, and became, sort of the basis of medicine going up into the 17th century. I believe it was taught in medical schools into the 17th century. And it was referenced a lot. So I don't know how many of you were on the call we did weeks and weeks ago on The Secrets of Women, but the author of The Secrets of Women, which is this text written by a monk all about women and how odd they are, actually quoted Avicenna. So he was also pulling on other people. He was pulling on Galen and Hippocrates, and brought sort of Aristotle into the mix. But hugely influential. And one of the ways that we can see how important and influential it was is that we have books like this one, which are translations that were clearly used much later. So we're going to start with LJS 209. All 3 of the manuscripts we're looking at today, if we can get to all 3 of them, are from LJS. That is the Schoenberg collection, which was collected over the life of Lawrence Schoenberg, and then they were gifted to us at his death, after his death. So this is a Hebrew translation. The bulk of it is. There are other things in this that aren't that text, and these are actually interesting in their own right. So in fact, it opens not with Hebrew, although it's written in Hebrew characters. This is one of the things that I find particularly interesting about this book, is that while the translation of Avicenna is in Hebrew, the other writings in this are in a language, or I think a language, called Judeo-Arabic. So it's actually Arabic, or a particular, can't think of the word, but like a flavor of Arabic that's written in Hebrew characters, and it is the language is sort of Arabic as.
Dot, I'm
Yes,
so
ma'am.
sorry to interrupt, but there's
Yeah.
like this weird thing oh, it's better. Sorry. I don't know. For a second, we had like a split screen where the top was moving with you turning the pages and the bottom was frozen, but I think it's
Oh
good
dear.
now.
Okay, sorry about that. But as I was saying, I believe the Judeo-Arabic, it's sort of a specific flavor of Arabic that was spoken by Jewish people who lived in the Arabic, in the lands where Muslim lands where people spoke Arabic. But they wrote it in Hebrew characters. And so this is Judeo-Arabic. There are a lot of notes. So notes are something that we often look to as signs that people were really reading, and a dialect. Thank you, Joyce. Yeah, I don't know why I couldn't think of the word dialect, but there you go. But notes in the margins are signs that people are reading and dealing with the text in there. So this is really interesting. So the first section is the record describes as brief medical passages / fragments. I'm guessing that these are probably quotes from something that just hasn't been identified or isn't identified. It is physically, it's pretty fragile a little bit. It's written on paper, so this is paper. It's pretty good paper. It's pretty sturdy. The binding is falling apart a little bit, and it's very stained. It's very heavily stained. I think it was probably got wet at some point. You can see here it's a little clearer where it's light, and then I think this has been water staining or something, and some of the text has been washed away. You can see that. So this has been, it's been through it. I'm trying to find when it was written. I think this is 16, I don't want to say it because I'm going to be wrong. So written in Yemen, anytime from about 1400 to 1525. And I want to say that those dates are maybe based on the, so written in Yemen in the 15th century. And I think that's part of that is based on the handwriting, or the script that's used, which is known to be the sort of Hebrew characters as written in Yemen at this time. Could also be the if there are watermarks on the paper, often, especially later, you can date manuscripts based on that. So that's the first part, is these Judeo-Arabic sections. And then the next part is this sort of page, this here, front and back. These are sayings of Galen in Hebrew and Arabic. But I think, again, they're written in Hebrew characters. I didn't see any, what I recognized as Arabic writing. And these have been clear, these are added, I say clearly, these have been added later. And you can probably see there's like a lot of people have come in and added these. And I think it's sort of interesting that since it's coming after this section of sort of fragments, that it's possible that they read this and they're like, oh, I like this Galen, and it was missed. And so I added one, and then somebody else added one, and somebody else added one. A really collaborative view of sort of adding your own thing to this existing stuff. So the next thing we have is another page. These are prescriptions in Judeo-Arabic. So these are prescriptions for some sort of medicine, but just that front and back here. And again, this ends at the top of the page, and then there's a lot more that's been added here. A lot of the notes that have been added have been identified, especially I think in this portion, have been identified as being by a former owner, Said Danuk, and he was writing in the 15th or maybe the early 16th century. So this was a bit older. These notes, especially here, are a bit older. So here's where we get to the Avicenna section. And we go on. There are headers that are written in a square script here. And as I'm just going to start sort of page through so you can get a sense of what this looks like. And there are a couple of pages that I put markers in because there were things that I found particularly interesting. What I was hoping to do, because the record doesn't actually say where the breaks between the books are, I was hoping I could maybe see that. I don't read Hebrew, but I was hoping to find headers.
Dot, it's
Yes, ma'am.
happening again. I'm sorry. We're frozen on an earlier page, and we can see at the top of the screen that you're turning the pages, but most of it we're not seeing.
Oh no, I am not seeing that. It looks fine. Let me stop sharing and then maybe share again.
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, sorry. Let's see. Can you even see that? It says the screen share is loading. So I'm guessing
it says
you
it has
can't-
started screen sharing. We're seeing a black screen.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to.
Okay, it popped up.
Yeah. Is the whole thing working?
Can you move your hand?
I just did. I'm literally turning the pages.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I apologize. I'm going to take my phone down and I'm going to call. Can you all see that?
Looks good.
All right. It is going to be a little, probably not as good resolution as it would be, but at least you can see it. Okay. Let's see where I was. I was basically just, I think I was saying that I put in some markers. Oh, I was hoping that I could see where the books divide, where one book goes into another, and then I couldn't. So this is just sort of showing the binding. I wanted to look at this. Binding is sort of coming apart, but there is a piece of binding waste. I have no idea what this is, but there's writing on it. This resolution isn't good, but I hope you can see that there's a little piece of paper and a little bit of writing on that. And I just thought it was neat that we could see that so clearly in here. So it's quite tight. This whole section is pretty tight. So here's just the next place where the binding comes apart. Lots and lots of notes in the margin, at the bottom and on the sides, and lots of different hands. This is kind of interesting because here we have a section where the hand, to me, this looks a lot more similar to the main hand. So I don't know if it is the main hand. My paleography in general isn't great, and my Hebrew paleography is worse, and then there's some more. It looks like there's some more here later on. So I think maybe my connection just isn't great today, and I apologize for that. This might be a section or a break in the book where we have the text sort of coming to a point, and then another text starting. So this, I might have missed that when I came through. I don't think I said the Hebrew text is actually in, oh, here's another place where a section of text ends and then another one starts here. The Hebrew translation, for reasons I don't entirely understand, is in 4 books and not 5 books. But this copy includes other sections that aren't included usually. And I'm still not sure entirely what that means, if that means there are other things that Avicenna wrote, or if they were things that somebody sort of added to it later and it just sort of got copied along, which is a thing that happens quite a lot. So here's some more of that staining. And then I think this may be, let's see, why did I put that there? I can't remember why I put that there. We're almost to the end of Avicenna himself. Oh, I marked this page because the notes on the bottom here look quite different from the other ones. And I just thought it was sort of interesting. Like there's almost like a decoration drawn around them. And I don't know if that's for a reason or it's just the style of this particular person, because I think this is different from a lot of the other hands that appear in here. Let's see. Here is another one. And then the end again is, let me find the page number, because once the Avicenna finishes, again, we have a different text that's in Judeo-Arabic. Oh, actually, it's here. I think that's what oh, here we go. That's why I put the marker there. So this is where we move from the Avicenna to this other text, which is a commentary on Galen, which is written in Judeo-Arabic. And there's no, there's nothing obvious here. I guess the text at the top is slightly larger. There's sort of a header here, but there's no sort of exciting ending. It's just sort of there. And then that finishes up, this copy. There are more here. Let me see. There's sort of an interesting, I don't know if this is, it looks like a little plant. So it could be somebody trying to draw a plant that's mentioned in the text. There's also, it looks like somebody has crossed out a word there. Whether that's related, I don't know. That's kind of interesting here. So this copy, really heavily used, well worn, contextualized by other related texts. So whoever copied it, was sort of including a lot of other related texts, whether they were using it, as whether they were actually doctors using it for practice or for study. It's sort of hard to say, but I like it. It's very cool. So we have a few minutes. So I'm going to take this away and we'll look at the other 2 examples just to sort of see how they're similar and how they're different. Before I do, I just I like this binding, especially this sort of version of a clasp where instead of like a metal clasp, it's this little knot, and you would have had a loop come around so you could keep the book closed. I think that's pretty neat. So that's LJS 299. So the next one we'll look at is an Arabic copy. And the, let's see, the shelf mark is LJS 426. It's in Arabic. This one is a little earlier. So this was written, we think, in Iran between 1375 and 1399, so 14th century. And this also has some interesting signs of use past the time that it was written. So this is also written on paper. It's a very nice sort of narrow script with some rubrication. The record says that it's only book 1, but it's 300 and something pages. So I don't actually know if it's only book 1 or if it's more than that. Just because the other book was the whole thing and only had 250 pages. So I don't know. But one of the things that I think is interesting about this one, well, one thing is, again, talking about signs of use. There are examples of marginal notes, added notes. This one is like somebody was very interested in this page because there are notes all around and there are interlinear notes. So somebody came through and added notes even between the lines, which indicates, I think, a real amount of interest just on this page and the reverse of it as well. But when we get to, here we go. I don't know how well you can see, but these two pages are quite different. The paper is lighter on this side and the paper is darker, and the writing is a lot more narrow on this side. And that's because the first 40 pages are actually replacements. So this was an earlier book, and for whatever reason, and this happens sometimes, we have a Carolingian book where this happened too. They replaced the first 40 and actually the last 10 pages. So these are newer, and then we get into the original section of it. And it's similar in format in a very simple way to the Hebrew copy, in that in this one we have text written in black and then we have these headers in red, whereas in the other manuscript all of the text was black, but we still had the headers, only they were differentiated by script. So they had the square script as well. So if the scribe had access to red ink, maybe they would have, written it in red too. Maybe they didn't, we don't know. But they found a different way to differentiate between that. So this is Avicenna, still very important. People were reading it and making notes about it, about the text. So I love this. Ooh, here's more. I really like to see people writing on books. I guess you shouldn't write on books today, but 400 years ago, it was fine for people to write on books. There we go. It gives us something to talk about. And in the last couple of minutes, because I do want to show the Latin copy, because it also has something sort of interesting going on with it. This is LJS 359. It's a fragment. This is just a little fragment of what was originally a larger book. And now we keep it in this paper wrapper. So this 13th century. This is even earlier. So we've been going back in time. This is England between 1250 and 1299. So sort of the last half of the 13th century. And let me zoom in a little bit so we can see it. It looks very similar to other texts we've looked at. So it has sort of nice colorful initials with pen work. It has these alternating blue and red initials. It has the headers at the top, or titles at the top. This is book 1. We know it's book 1 because there's a 1 at the top, Roman initial. So this has some marginal notes. These aren't later. It looks like these are even maybe scribal notes. The thing that's interesting about this copy, this book, is that you get just a few pages in, and this happens. And I'm going to zoom in so you can see that. What's happened is something, I don't actually know what, something has happened in the middle of the page, and a parchment patch has been glued in and replacement text written through it. And this is really close to the time that the main text was made. This was not substantially later. It looks very similar to me. And it continues into the page. And so what I find notable about this is that they had this book, and it was important enough to whoever had it that there was some kind of damage, like something happened to the book. And instead of tossing it or using it for scrap, which is would have been perfectly reasonable, they actually used, I guess, new parchment, or maybe it's reused parchment, I don't actually know, but they patched it up and they wrote the text over it because it was that important that they have a copy of this text. I just think that's so interesting here. And then it gets sort of smaller until you get to this part here, and I'll zoom out a little bit. And then there's nothing on the other side, which sort of makes me like something maybe hot was set. I actually don't know. Amy, you've seen this before? Do you have any idea what? No idea. But I love this because it's like one thing, like what happened here. And then the other thing is how the manuscript itself was treated, that it was considered to be important enough to save. And that, to like sum up my thesis, is like the power of Avicenna, that this text was important enough to like fix and hold on to. So that's our little romp through the history of Avicenna in the Middle Ages in 3 examples. So I'm really sorry about the technical difficulties, everybody, but thank you for oh, I didn't see that there were notes. Yes. So thank you, everybody. I will let you go. Hopefully next week I'll look into the tech, and hopefully next week will go better. But thanks for sticking around, and I hope I'll see you again soon.